Part 3. Related compile parameters of partial Jacquard. The compilation parameters of partial Jacquard involve two parts. One of them is the pick yarn in intarsia. Another is the connection JQD and Singer in Jacquard. These are the commonly used parameters for partial Jacquard. First, introduce the pick yarn in intarsia. The parameter settings here are mainly valid for the yarn feeder of intarsia layer. This is a setting of lead out, or called yarn out. Usually choose front tuck, rear knit. This is a setting of yarn in. Minimum number of. The minimum number of needles with yarn in, out from the edge of the fabric to the first needles of this yarn feeder. If it is greater than the number of needles set here, then use the yarn in and yarn out model set above. If it is less than the minimum number of needles set here, then just pull the float line. Do not use yarn in and yarn out model set above. Tuck interval, number of spacer needles, between front tuck and rear knit. Knotting method, the knotting method when yarn in. Choose according to your needs. Or choose now. Interval rows of dolphin and dolphin times, when yarn in and yarn out. Then let's take a look at the parts affected by these parameters. Yarn in model. 3 stitches spaced between front tuck and rear knit. This is the number of tuck interval we just set. Rear knitting of yarn in, out requires dolphin. Dolphin times is 2. Interval rows of dolphin is 2 rows here. Knotting refers to the handling of this position. Usually choose now. Part 2. Jacquard related compilation parameter settings. Jacquard. Singer to JQD. These are the transition methods of single-sided to Jacquard. You can set it according to your needs. Before the partial Jacquard, the transition row from single-sided to JQD. Minimum number of. The minimum number of stitches required for the transition from single-sided to JQD. If the number of stitches is less than the set number, the transition row will not be processed. If it is greater than this minimum number of stitches, there will be a transition row. Inset 1 by 1B. Except for Jacquard. Except for Jacquard is a setting for the whole JQD row. That is the function line 216 is marked here 21 to 71. Transition row of these Jacquard sections. If transition is required, then there is no tick here. Tick if no transition is required. It should be noted that, after ticking, there is no transition row when drawing Jacquard. Then we need to draw it ourselves. So recommends that you do not tick here. We usually choose the transition row that the design system compiles. This is a transition row setting for single-sided to JQD of partial Jacquard. Singer to JQD 1 needle. When only one needle in the first row of partial Jacquard is Jacquard, transition mode can be set individually or ignore. If you choose neglect, then there is no transition row for single-sided to Jacquard where only one needle of the first Jacquard row, JQD to Singer. After the Jacquard is knitted, before knitting Singer, the single-sided part has no back knitting. Transfer to front. The transfer action is set in Jacquard here. Usually this place can't choose to neglect. If you choose to ignore it, you have to draw it by yourself. Because there is no transition, will be hanging needles. Try new JQD back. You can customize the new knitting form. There are define and color Jacquard and enable word mesh to modes. When using both modes, you need to check try new JQD back first. The first mode fills in the number n, which is selected when the floating line of the partial Jacquard back is long. For example, mesh every 5 for 6 color. You want the needle interval of mesh every 5 for 3 color. Just fill in 3 here. Enable word mesh. It is mesh whose effect is vertical. The same yarn feeder is only knitted on the same needle. In this way, the effective mesh wheel is vertical. These two forms can be selected according to the needs. Auto connect. When there are front and back knit in the pattern layer of the Jacquard part, to transfer or not. That is to say, there are front and back knitting here. Turn the front loops over to the back in advance or not. And after back knitting, turn the back loops over to the front. If ticked, will automatically connect. Let's take a look. Transfer to back. Back knit. The form of the back is unchanged. Just change the front knit to the back knit. Then transfer to front. This is auto connect. If you don't need to transfer, cancel this. Next, enable JQD stitch and enable JQD to Singer stitch. These two are the parameters for setting the partial Jacquard density. The density of the Jacquard and intarsia parts of the partial Jacquard should be set differently. Because this Jacquard part is knitted both front and back, it will be tighter. The density setting in function line 207. Like this. Right-click. Column 3, Part JQD section. Fill in 10 here. Therefore, the part of the partial Jacquard after compilation is the 10th density. The Singer-sided position is the 8th density. Then if you don't want to use the density here, then uncheck these in the Jacquard. Enable JQD to Singer stitch. JQD to Singer refers to the position where the Jacquard ends and turns to one side. Where is it set? There is no. In the shape advance yarn and param JQD to Singer. Here is the set 8. The param of partial Jacquard can also be set here. Here is the set 10. Can be modified directly in the shape, for example 11. Singer to JQD is set 19. JQD to Singer is set 11 too. OK. Don't click OK here. If OK, then the partial Jacquard just drawn will be gone. So click Cancel here. Compile. Check these two when compiling. If it is not checked, it will not be enabled. That is to say, it's all paragraph 8. Singer to JQD is 19, same as filling in the shape. Part JQD is 10, not 11. JQD to Singer is 11, same as filling in the shape. The column 3 of the function line has set the density of local Jacquard. It is also set in advance of shape. If both are set, use the function line setting. If the function line is not filled here, use the setting of the shape. Partial JQD is set 11 in the shape. There is an input box behind Enable JQD to single stitch. The number here represents the number of needles. That is to say, the number of stitches of the Jacquard to Singer is less than the number set in the compilation, 10. Then the setting of enable JQD to Singer stitch is invalid. That is, although this parameter is enabled, but the number of needles in this place is less than 10, then this setting will be invalid. Try to optimize speed. After checking, the number of rows will be less. The system will try to combine the knitting rows. After the combination, the efficiency will be improved. But sometimes the effect knitting after the combination is not what we want. In that case, everyone makes a choice. Because effect and efficiency are often only choose one. Part Jacquard reduce 1 pin. After this is selected, omit the back knitting form first when adding 1 pin to partial Jacquard. Choose according to your needs. If you want to knit a partial Jacquard with a machine with self-running yarn feeder, just select the model with the word ADF when selecting the model in the advanced. ADF is self-running yarn feeder. Auto-running yarn feeder be with 2 systems and 3 systems. And with 8 or 16 auto-running yarn feeders. And machines with AFC, auto-running telescopic yarn feeder. Gauge, width. Comb. Variable density. Support back density. These parameters are selected according to the actual situation of the machine. After compiling, you can knit without problems. The above are the commonly used parameter settings for partial Jacquard pattern.